all the attendees, sir. Okay, so we are here to be critical studies one MA English paper, and the topic is the instance or agency of the letter in the unconscious or reason since Freud. So we have here the faculty, Dr. T.K. Rajendran sir, Assistant Professor of English, University College, Trivandrum. Okay, sir.
Hello. Today we shall discuss Jacques Lacan's influential paper, The Agency of the Letter in the Unconscious or Reason since Freud. There can be some confusion regarding the title of the paper. In some papers, in some texts, it is given as The Insistence of the Letter in the Unconscious or Reason since Freud. But in some other texts, it is given as the instance of the letter in the unconscious. But in Lacan's 𝐂𝐫𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐜, it is given, the title is given as the agency of the letter in the unconscious or reason since Freud. This can be a problem with the translation of the paper. Anyway, let us discuss the contents of the paper. And, to prepare the ground for an effective discussion on Jacques Lacan, we need to be familiar with two important figures. One is definitely the Austrian neurologist Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud, as I told you, is an Austrian neurologist, and he introduced psychoanalysis as a form of therapy to cure mental illness by investigating the interaction between the conscious and the unconscious mind. And this is a revolutionary idea indeed, that is the concept of the unconscious is a revolutionary idea, because with this Freud challenged the conventional view of the human mind as a unified whole. And that kind of an idea, that is the human mind as a unified whole, had been prevalent since the Enlightenment days. And the human mind is a unified whole. But here, Freud challenged this view and he compared the human mind to an iceberg. Only the tip of the iceberg is seen above the surface, and its density and weight lies beneath. In the same way, the conscious mind of man can be seen as the tip of the iceberg, and what lies beneath it is what is called the unconscious mind. And that is why Freud once said that much of our human mental activities are unconscious in nature. I know what is this unconscious mind. When we were children, we enjoyed limitless freedom. We were free to do whatever we like, even in public. But as we advanced in age, we learned to suppress some of our emotions which are unacceptable to others in the society. So this process is what is called a repression in psychology. And repression, is a psychological censorship which is social life. And the unconscious mind, according to Freud, is the product of such repressed desires and instincts. And this is how Freud theorized the unconscious mind. And another important figure that we have to be familiar with is the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure. Ferdinand de Saussure is the study of language by introducing structuralism. And so here he challenged the conventional views in the study of language, that especially language as a naming process. So this was the conventional view of language. Language as a naming process, that means the word is something that unites a name with an object. And Saussure rejected this view, and instead he introduced his concept of the sign. And according to Saussure, the sign is a combination of the signifier and the signified. And this is the algorithm. the sign, the signifier by the signified. And what is the signifier? The signifier is a psychological image which can be either graphic or phonic, that is spoken or written. And the signified is not the object, but it is the concept. So that is the difference. Signified is not the object, it is the concept. So a sign is a totality consisting of the signifier and the signified. And so the signified is a concept. It means, so when we say tree, that signifier is not attached to the tree standing outside there, but it is the tree that exists as a concept in the person's mind. And this is how Lacan says that the sign is a totality consisting of the signifier and the signified. Another important Saussurean contribution is his idea that language has a structure. Language has a structure. And this structure of the language operates along two axes. They are the vertical paradigmatic axis of selection and the horizontal syntagmatic axis of combination. So these are two essential processes in language. Paradigmatic refers to selection. And so that means when we make a sentence, when we utter a sentence, first we make and unconsciously we make a selection of items needed for the construction. That is a selection of items from a list of possible items already there in our mind. And this selection is done along a vertical axis, a paradigmatic axis. And once this selection is over, the next step is to combine them according to the rules of the grammar, according to the rules of the language, along a horizontal syntagmatic axis. So take the example of the child cried. So here items are there, the subject is there, the verb is there, and they are selected from a list of possible items in which one can substitute for another. And we select these items and then we combine them according to the rules of the grammar. So according to the word order in English language, the subject is followed by the verb. That is why we construct the sentence as the child cried. So thus language is articulated along these two axes, that is the vertical paradigmatic axis of selection and then the horizontal syntagmatic axis of combination. This is an important idea put forward by Saussure. Now let us come back to our topic, that is Jacques Lacan's paper, The Agency of the Letter in the Unconscious. And this paper is important because it is in this paper that Lacan introduced his theories of language and the unconscious. And this paper is divided into three parts. The first part is the meaning of the letter. The second, the letter in the unconscious. And the third is the letter being and the other. So these are the three parts of the paper. Now we shall go to the first part, that is the meaning of the letter. And now, what is meant by letter here? Here we should know Freud's and Lacan's concepts of the unconscious. And we have already seen, or we have already discussed Freud's concept of the unconscious. It is constituted by, according to Freud, unconscious is constituted by repressed feelings and instincts and desires, and thus the unconscious is part of the human psyche. It is an integral part of the human psyche. This is what Freud spoke about the unconscious mind. But Lacan gave an altogether different view of the unconscious. And he said that the unconscious, located within the individual human psyche, it is outside. It is outside the individual. That is, it is located in intersubject relationships. It is located in intersubject relationships. That's why Lacan said that the unconscious is structured like language, and we shall definitely come to later. What is the letter? What is the meaning of the letter in the title? The meaning of the letter. So here he says that the letter here is the material support that concrete discourses borrow from language. Letter is the material support that concrete discourses borrow from language. And what does this mean? So here, letter should be taken in the literal sense itself, that it is the material support that concrete discourses borrow from language. You know, children develop concepts first. They develop concepts or ideas first. That means even before the acquisition of language, the child develops concepts about its mother, concepts about its father or brother. So such concepts are there even before language acquisition. And that is why the child can, understand its mother, because the child has an idea or a concept about its mother. So that means signifieds are developed in the initial stage itself. That is even before language acquisition. But after language acquisition, what happens is that the child learns to associate the newly learned system of signifiers, that is language, newly learned system of signifiers, the already signifiers. So that means the signifiers were the arrival of, so the child just learns to associate the signifiers with the signifiers. So that means these signifiers are constituted by called constituted by differential elements like letters. So this is how he says that the letter is the material support that concrete discourses borrow from language. And now let us turn to a process. The child associates his signifiers with the signifiers. But remember, these signifiers are something that pre-exists him. That means language is something that pre-exists the child. It was there even before its birth. So that means now, but the child appropriates the language that already exists there, which means the signifiers enter the mind of the child, and thus the signifiers exert or imposes its own structures, or their own, signifiers impose their own structures on the child's mind. So thus the signifier is a structuring mechanism, and so this structuring mechanism now structures the mind of the child. This is why Lacan says that it is not we who master the language, it is the language that masters us. So it is not we who master the language, it is the language that masters us. So that means we use the language of somebody else and we express our ideas through the language of somebody else. So that means language is something that pre-exists the subject. So the subject is formed. And thus the subject becomes the slave of the language. The subject becomes the slave of the language. And after that, the language controls and governs the thoughts of. And so this is, evident in Saussure's concept of the sign. That is, the sign, is a combination of the signifier and the signified. A combination of the signifier and the signified. So this is a Saussurean algorithm. Sign is signifier by signified. So here, Lacan takes a deviation from here. So here, according to Lacan, he is not concerned about the signifier or the signified. He is concerned about the line that separates the signifier from the signified. He is interested in the line, that he is concerned with the line that separates the signifier from the signified. And what is the significance of this line? So according to Lacan, this is an extra-linguistic barrier that resists signification. Line or bar is an extra-linguistic barrier that resists signification. And what does this mean? The sign is a combination of signifier and the signified. And now, what is the criterion for giving names to objects. What is the criterion for giving names to objects? So when we name an object, we take into consideration how it matters to us, which means we neglect or we ignore all other aspects or features or properties of the object, and we take into consideration only what matters to us or how it matters to us. So that means I shall make it clear with an example. So take the case of a tablet for, the medicine for curing some disease. So the tablet is after all a chemical compound, but when it enters our body, it makes a multiplicity of effects in our body, and the curing capacity is only one among them. But it is for this that we consume the tablet. Means we, for the time being, ignore all other side effects of the or effects of the tablet in our body. In the same way, when we name an object, we take into consideration only how it matters to us, which means we ignore or suppress all other possible meanings, features, and properties of the object under an imaginary extralinguistic barrier. And so this line that separates the signifier from the signified is that extralinguistic imaginary barrier. And now, so this is a Saussurean diagram, that is the signifier and the signified. But here Lacan takes a different view from this. In Saussurean algorithm, both the signifier and the signified are of equal importance. Both the signifier and the signified are of equal importance, and the signifier is attached to the signified. But Lacan here slightly differs from Saussurean system, and then he says that the signifier is more important than the signified. Thus, he places the signifier over the signified, and he makes this clear with an example. With an example of the example of two toilet doors, two identical toilet doors with two signifiers, ladies and gentlemen. So here he says that these are two, toilet doors in a railway station. A train arrives. A train arrives at the railway station, and two children, a small boy and his little sister, are sitting face to face by the side of a window, by the side of two windows. They are sitting face to face. And from the boy's window, he can read that signboard, ladies. And from the girl's window, she can read that signboard, gentlemen. And now the boy says, look, we have arrived at the ladies. And then the boy says, idiot, no, don't you know, we have arrived at gentlemen. So here in this example, both children try to attach different signifiers with the same signified, and the signified being the place. And so they try to attach two different signifiers with the same signified. And in this analogy, the railway line, the rail signifies the line that differentiates or that separates the signifier from the signified. It is the railway line that functions as the bar or the line in the Saussurean algorithm, that is the line between the signifier and the signified. And it is the rail that prevents them from arriving at some kind of a truth about the place. So this, or in another from another point of view, we can say that these two are two identical doors, but they get their meaning with the signifiers and ladies and gentlemen. Got it? It is these signboards that gave them their meanings. One is a toilet for ladies, and the other is a toilet for gentlemen. And this meaning is here given by or made by the signifiers, not the signifiers, but the signifiers. And because all these two doors, the two doors are identical. They are two identical doors, identical rooms. But it is their sign doors that make them meaningful. And so Lacan says that it is a signifier that determines meaning. The signifier enters the signified, it alters it structures it, and it creates meaning or the concept. So that means here the signifier is more important than the signified. It is not the signified, but it is a signifier that generates meaning. And another aspect of the signifier is that in the Saussurean model, the signifier is attached to the signified. But Lacan says that every signifier is attached to another signifier. Every signifier is attached to another signifier, not to the signified, but to another signifier. For example, take the case of the toilet doors. So two signifiers are there, ladies and gentlemen. Here, to explain their meaning, we have to define another signifier, that is the toilet. What is a toilet then? And then to explain the meaning of toilet, again, we need to explain another signifier, that is sanitary segregation or something like that. So that means every signifier is attached to another signifier, and thus it is a never-ending chain. So every signifier is attached to another signifier, that in turn is attached to another signifier, and this is a never-ending chain. And here Lacan says that it is in this chain that meaning insists, but none of them consists meaning. It is in this chain that meaning insists, but none of them consists of meaning. So here, this does not mean that the signifieds are entirely detached from the signifieds. There are certain anchoring points of meaning in this, chain, and those anchoring points of meaning are called points 𝐷𝐸𝐻. Points POINTS 𝐷𝐸𝐻, CAPTION. Points 𝐷𝐸𝐻. So what is meant by points 𝐷𝐸𝐻? That is a term taken from upholstery works. In upholstery works, that is in the making of the sofas or settee, the resin or the leather is fixed to the wooden frame using buttons fixed at regular intervals. And such buttons in upholstery work are called points 𝐷𝐸𝐻. In the same way, there are certain anchoring points of meaning in the signifying chain. So this is the structure of signification according to Lacan. And now we can say that we can never reach the realm of the signified. The realm of the signifier is more extensive and structuring and controlling than the realm of the signified. And so this is how Lacan offers a different interpretation to the sign than Saussure. And now another aspect of the signifier is that they are subjected to a double conditioning. The signifiers are subjected to a double condition. One is that they are reducible to ultimate differential elements. Ultimate differential elements like phonemes. That is, the different combinations of phonemes can make different signifiers. So they are reducible to ultimate differential elements like phonemes. That is one aspect of the signifier. Another is that they can be combined. The signifiers can be combined according to the rules of a close product. That means according to the rules of grammar or language. We can combine them to form meaningful utterances. So thus signifiers are subjected to a double conditioning, that is reducible to differential elements like phonemes and then they can be combined according to the rules of a closed order. And now, here, Lacan acknowledges his debt to Roman Jakobsen's metaphor and metonymy. And the double conditioning of the signifier can be seen analogous to Roman Jakobsen's concepts of metaphor and metonymy. So here, what is metaphor and what is metonymy? So metaphor, is a figure of speech. Metaphor is a figure of speech. And in metaphor, one element can substitute for another, or one, sign stands for another sign. That is what is called a metaphor. Or in other words, we can say that, for example, all the world is a stage. A famous Shakespearean thought. All the world is a stage. That's an example of metaphor. So what is metaphor here? One stands for another. So that is the logic of metaphor. One can stand for another. So that means, or in other words, metaphor refers to the superimposition of one signifier over the another signifier. So it refers to the superimposition of one signifier over another signifier. That is the logic of metaphor. And then metonymy. And what is metonymy? Metonymy is also a figure of speech. And in metonymy, in the case of metonymy, meaning is created through association. Meaning is created through association. So, for example, let us take the sentence, he ascended the throne. What does it mean? He ascended the throne means he became the king. Why? Because throne is associated with kingship. So this is how metonymy works. And metonymy works on the logic of combination or association. So that means these two figures of speech can be linked to the Saussurean axis of language, that is paradigmatic and syntagmatic axis of language. That means metaphor shares the features of the paradigmatic axis. Metaphor shares the features of the paradigmatic axis, or in other words, the logic of metaphor is the same as that of paradigmatic axis. So that means there is a parallelism between metaphor and the paradigmatic axis of language. And again, on the other side, metonymy is similar to the syntagmatic axis. Why? Because in syntagmatic axis, meaning is a matter of association. One was, for example, and the subject is associated with the verb, and this is how meaning is produced there. So there is a kind of association. So that means the logic of metaphor and metonymy can be seen similar to the logic of paradigmatic and syntagmatic axis of language. And now, Lacan here says that the unconscious mind shares the features of language because it is structured like language. Thus, he prepares his ground for the thesis that in the first part he prepares his ground for the central thesis that the unconscious is structured like language. Now we shall turn to the second part, that is the letter in the unconscious. And now, so what is the significance of the title, the letter in the unconscious? So here, again, we have to turn to Freud's ideas, Freud's theories. And in this section, Lacan discusses Freud's increasing attention to language. Freud's increasing attention to language in the analysis of the unconscious. So in his famous dream analysis, according to Freud, dreams are wish fulfillments. In his famous dream analysis, he spoke about two primary processes. One process is condensation and the other is displacement. What is meant by condensation? So These two processes are there in the making of a dream: condensation and displacement. What is meant by condensation and what is meant by displacement? You know, condensation is a process of compression. You know, a dream has two contents. A dream has two contents. One is the manifest content, and the other is the latent content. So these are the two contents of a dream. What is meant by manifest content? So what we see as dream is the manifest content. So what we see in the dream is the manifest content. And what produces that dream, what induces that dream, that late unconscious impulses behind the dream can be called the latent content. And you know, the actual duration of a dream, only 2 seconds. The actual duration of a dream is only 2 seconds. But the latent content or the real actual experiences that produce this dream may cover several days or months or experiences. And so in the dream, they have to be condensed, they have to be compressed. And this powerful compression is what is called a condensation. So that means in condensation, one image or one symbol or one image can stand for a multiplicity of ideas. And this is the logic of condensation. For example, in persecutory dreams means dreams in which we see ourselves being chased or attacked by some giants or monsters. Such dreams are persecutory dreams. Somebody persecutes us, maybe a giant or a monster with 4 hands or 2 heads or something like that. But somehow we feel that this fellow is familiar to us, familiar to me. So sometimes the dreamer may feel this figure is somewhat familiar to me, but it is a monster. The thing is that in actual life, that means in latent content, there can be 2 or 3 persons who really persecute the person, like an oppressive spouse, an oppressive parent, an oppressive boss, or maybe an oppressive professor. And so all such persons are there in real life who really give mental stress to the dreamer. But in the dream, because of that particular logic of condensation, one image is superimposed over the other, and the result is a new image is made carrying the features of the silent features of all others in the real life. And this is some sort of a caricature, a kind of photophobic. And this process is what is called a condensation. And so the same figure stands for a multiplicity of persons. And now, what is displacement? In displacement, there is something wrong with the association. There is something wrong with the association of different elements. They can be displaced. So, for example, and this is an effect of condensation. And so here there can be different kinds of displacement, like chronological displacement and something like that. And an example is anxiety dreams. There are anxiety dreams. That means in dreams in which we see ourselves as so much anxious about some silly events. It is silly event. So we are very much tensed or anxious about some very silly things. And here what happens is that we in real life or in latent content, we really are tensed about or anxious about some big serious problem. But the thing is that our mind does not want to recall that unpleasant serious experience to the mind. So what happens is that that real serious terrible situation is replaced with a silly situation, a silly thing. And this is a kind of displacement. This is an example of displacement. So these are the two processes involved in the making of a dream: condensation and displacement. And now we can see that the logic of condensation and condensation corresponds to the logic of metaphor. Metaphor in Jacobson. Metaphor is the superimposition of one image or one signifier over another. And this is the logic of, condensation. One image is superimposed over the other. Now then, what is displacement? Displacement corresponds to metonymy. Displacement corresponds to metonymy because it is actually a sliding away, a slipping off on the part of the signifying chain. So this is how Lacan says that these two processes of metaphor and metonymy are central to the signifying process. They are central to the signifying process. So in the case of dream analysis, both the primary processes, that is condensation and displacement, are similar to metaphor and metonymy. And thus we can say that the dream is a kind of writing. The dream is a kind of writing, a writing that makes use of the syntagmatic and paradigmatic axis of language, or a writing that makes use of the metaphoric and metonymic poles of language, or it is a kind of writing that makes use of condensation and displacement. So thus he says that unconscious is structured like language. So this is how he states that the unconscious is structured like language. And then another thing is that here again we can see a kind of parallelism, different kinds of parallelism. On one side, there is a parallelism between the paradigmatic axis of selection and the metaphoric axis of Jacobson and Freud's concept of condensation. And on the other side, we can see syntagmatic axis of Saussure's syntagmatic axis of combination, Jacobson's metonymic pole of language, and Freud's displacement. So thus we can see a parallelism between this, these two. That means two systems of signification. And now he turns to the subject, that is subjectivity and subject. And what is the human subject? And so here, human subject had been a favorite topic for Western philosophers since the ancient time. René Descartes, defined the human being as cogito ergo sum. Cogito ergo sum. This is Descartes' concept of the human subject. So what is meant by cogito ergo sum? Cogito ergo sum means I think, therefore I am. What does this mean? I think, therefore I am means I am my thoughts. What I think constitutes me. So I am constituted by my thoughts. So I am nothing but my thoughts. I think, therefore I am. So I can doubt everything in the world. I can doubt even the existence of the world, but I cannot doubt the existence of myself because it is I who doubt. I am the doubter. So thus, the idea is that I think, therefore I am means I am my thoughts, my identity, my subjectivity, and all such things are made by my thoughts. This is what Descartes says. But here Lacan reverses this formula and he says that cogito ergo sum, ubi cogito ibi sum. I think, therefore I am. Where I think, there I am. So what does this mean? So here Lacan says that I am not my thoughts. Why? Because my thoughts are not me. My thoughts are supplied to me, transferred to me from a vaster signifying chain that exists outside myself. So that means there is a chain of language. It is the language that offers the subject the space to think. It is the language that channelizes the subject's thoughts. It is the language that gives the subject thoughts, feelings, and ideas. And so the subject here makes use of that already existing ideas. Then how can I say that I am my thoughts? So that means where I stand is important. And the point is that, or it is equal to say that I think, therefore I am not. I think, therefore I am not. Okay, because I am thinking using the tool supplied to me by somebody else. So that means my thoughts are not mine. They belong to that vaster signifying chain that exists outside myself. And that is why this is how Lacan reversed Descartes' concept, cogito ergo sum. And so we can say that the place that I I occupies as a signifier is a position in language. It's a grammatical function. And again, the place that I occupy as a signified will also be a place situated in language, a network of language. So this is how he challenged the Descartes concept of cogito ergo sum. And so now the third part of the paper is the letter being and the other. So here, Lacan now criticizes Freud for his theories about the unconscious mind from the perspective of psychoanalysis. Why? Here we can see a paradoxical situation. On one side, Freud defined the unconscious as an integral part of the human psyche, and it is never considered as an aberration. It is never considered as an aberration because it is part of the individual human psyche, according to Freud. But at the same time, he introduced the psychoanalysis to our mental illness, investigating the interaction between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. So that means, from the point of view of psychoanalysis, the unconscious mind is considered as an aberration. The unconscious mind is considered as an aberration. So that means, to cure mental illness, the person must be taught to adjust with the standards of normalcy already fixed by the society. So this is what psychoanalysis does. So psychoanalysis as a form of therapy brings the person to normalcy because this kind of a normalcy is demanded by the society outside subject. So thus psychoanalysis bypasses Freud's own theories of the unconscious mind. So that means psychoanalysis tries to negate the unconscious mind by taming it so that it can look normal according to the standards fixed by the society outside the subject. And now, again, Lacan says that the unconscious is the discourse of the other. And in his famous treatise on mirror states, Lacan has introduced the two concepts of other. One with the small o, that is, we can call it small other, and then the other is one with big other. We can call it big other. So, in capital O. So one other is with a small o, that is small other, and the other is with a capital O, which can be called the big other. So what is the difference between the two, small other and big other? So what I am is the self. What I am is the self. And what I am not is the small other. What I am not is the small other. And according to Lacan, during the mirror stage, the child does not know the difference between self and the other. And it is an imaginary oneness with its environment. So then the small other is what the self is not. But the big other is something different. The big other here refers to the whole overarching symbolic agency that determines the subject's role in the society. We are actually born into certain slots which we are already fixed here. So every individual is born into a slot which had been there even before its birth. That means my ethnicity, my religion, my nationality, my linguistic status, and even my name are not my choice. They were there. That slot was there even before my birth. I was born to that particular slot. So that slot was again the agency that created that slot can be considered as the big other. So it can be language, it can be state, it can be culture. And so the big other is an overarching symbolic agency that determines the role of the subject in the society or in the world. And so here he says that the unconscious is the discourse of this other. The unconscious is the discourse of the big other. Because it is a big other that structures our thoughts, that structures our desires, that structures our instincts, and it is in the conflict between the self and the other that the unconscious is formed. So we can say that the unconscious is something exterior to the individual. It is not inside the person. It is not inside the subject. It is something exterior to the subject, and this is how Lacan states that the unconscious is structured like a language. So these are the three important paper, the agency of the letter in the end. The presentation is over, and now we can go for
the questions
discussion.
are where is the minute limit between that Romans Jacobins you were describing, right? The metaphor and metonymy.
Yes.
So one was asking the limit between the two terms, metaphor and metonymy.
Okay. So here both are, as you know, figures of speech, metaphor and metonymy. So both are, as you said, slightly different from each other. On metaphor, in what happens in metaphor is that one signifier stands for another, or one signifier is superimposed over the other. That means one idea can stand for another, that is metaphor. So all the world is a stage means the stage can stand for the world, because there is something similar between them. That is the world and the stage. So that means here one can stand for another, which means one signifier can be superimposed over the other. So this is metaphor. This is the logic of metaphor. And that means there is a displaced signifier in the case of metaphor. And Lacan calls this occulted signifier. This occulted signifier or displaced signifier maintains its association with the rest of the chain. That is what we can call metonymy. So that is both metaphor and metonymy can be seen in the same situation. So the displaced signifier maintains its relation to the chain, to the rest of the chain in a metonymic association. This is what Lacan said. So metonymy is the process of displacement. So that means one a signifier or one sign is displaced or replaced with another, or there is some kind of a change in the association between signs in the case of metonymy. So here one element is displaced by another element in the case of metonymy. So this is the logic of metonymy, and that is what I said. Is it clear now?
Okay. Yeah. There is one more question by Adira M. If my thoughts are conveyed to me by some external agency like society, isn't it my own thoughts that goes to the unconscious as repressed desire?
Yes, definitely. Because okay. So here definitely. So that means when the subject interacts with that big other, or that overarching symbolic agency, or what we can call language, or that signifying chain that stands outside the individual, this unconscious is formed. So that means there are some thoughts in my mind. There are some ideas or concepts or signifiers in my mind, but I cannot express them because I cannot find words. I cannot find signifiers. So the thing is that my mind is now structured according to the logic of the language, according to the law. And so I am taught to think in terms of the language that determines my subjectivity. That is definitely.
Okay, so there is another question by J. Sir, does the concept of signifier by Lacan same as that of Piaget's concept of schema? Yes,
Yes, to a certain extent. Yes, definitely to a certain extent. That is similar to Piaget's concept. Okay.
Okay, there is one more question by Nandu Krishna S. How can we simply differentiate Freudian psychoanalysis from that of Lacan? Yeah.
So that is obvious because Freudian psychoanalysis, as we have already seen, Freudian psychoanalysis works on the assumption that the unconscious is located within the individual psyche. And that is what I said in the end of the paper. So Freudian unconscious thinks that Freudian psychoanalysis thinks that the unconscious is an aberration that should be reintegrated according to the standards set by the society. But Lacan says that it is not an aberration. And this was stated by Freud also. But Freud contradicted this, in fact, in his concept, in his theory of psychoanalysis, because psychoanalysis considered unconscious as an aberration. And what Lacan said is that all these things can be reformulated using Saussurean linguistics. That means Saussure's linguistics can be used as a tool to explain different theories of Freud. So, for example, in Saussurean, Freudian theories, there are what is called castration complex, and so this is an important aspect of an important part of Freudian Oedipus complex. And according to Freud, the child develops castration complex. And what is castration complex? He becomes afraid of the fact that he will be stripped of his, penis if he continues his obsessive love for his mother. And Lacan now places this in the logic of the big other. Lacan says that this is never the fear of losing one's penis. It is, in fact, the fear of losing one's male identity. And this male identity constructed by the big other. And the child is afraid of losing that male identity. So this is how he reformulated Freudian theories in the light of Saussurean linguistics. Okay. Hope it's clear.
Yeah, the students are asking the important questions in the topic.
Definitely, you can, as we have already said, one question can be, the unconscious is structured like language. Elucidate. That can be a question. How Lacan proved that the unconscious is structured like language? That can be a question. And again, there can be, short answer questions about, Freud's and condensation and displacement, how they are appropriated to be used in linguistics and the like. So that means the parallelism between metaphoric and the metonymic poles of language, and Freud's concept of condensation and displacement, and all this can be.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the students are asking, the questions are almost over, the time is almost up. And thank you, sir. Thank you all the attendees for participating. And yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, have a great day.